Welcome, everyone, to the Master B2B Fireside Chat series. My name is Brian Beck. I'm the co-founder of the Master B2B series, and excited to be here with you today. In our Fireside Chats, we talk about key issues in B2B e-commerce and digital transformation for manufacturers and distributors. This series is brought to you in partnership with Tata Consultancy Services, and my co-pilot in this effort is Murugan. Those of you who don't know TCS, they are a leading IT services firm trusted by the leaders around the world in B2B and B2C. So Murugan, great to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Brian. So looking forward to the conversation with Eric.
Yes, and we have a special guest today on our fireside chat. We don't have a fire, but we certainly are going to chat, right? Eric, the battering ram Rehl, is here with us. Eric is a return. He was a contender with us in one of our debates last year. Eric, excited to have you back. Eric is the VP of digital customer experience at Schneider Electric. He's been around for quite some time in this industry. You were at Rockwell, you were at Avnet for 3 years. And gosh, we're really excited. Eric, thanks for being here with us today and taking some time.
My pleasure. Great to be here, and I appreciate you having me back.
Absolutely. And hailing from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Home turf. Excellent. Midwest, solid.
That's right.
B2B land. Great. Even though you're a Wisconsin fan, that's okay.
Right.
I'm a long suffering. So, well, guys, we're going to talk about ROI today, right? And building and measuring the business case for business for digital investment. This is one of the things that we, Andy Hoare and I, hear all the time in our thought leadership series about, executives really trying to get the C-suite, the board aligned behind the right digital investments, how to make that work, and how to make the case and then measure results, particularly as we get into areas where, the economy, people are questioning the future of the economy, people are getting more cautious about investments. So picking what you're going to bet on is more important than ever before. So Eric, we're going to open this up to you with a question. You've been in this field for 25 years, I think now, right? So yep. You've seen a lot of change, I'm sure, in how companies are thinking about this. So give us a little overview of your experience and sort of how the C-suite thinking has changed over the time that you've been in this industry regarding digital investments.
Yeah, certainly. So, I've been doing this digital stuff. I started out coding kind of basic HTML when we were just putting brochureware up on the web, and it was considered a website, right? And
right.
So that was long ago, and obviously we've seen a lot of evolution and maturation of that time. But the way I like to think about this is really in the last 15 years, you've seen a considerable evolution, I guess I'll call it, in terms of how the C-suite views the idea of digital. And, if you go back about 15 years, give or take, the idea then was that a digital investment was a website, right, which didn't carry a lot of priority. They know they needed one, but, as long as it's decent and it's not causing a problem, we'll make that investment. Or, which they took much more seriously, was an ERP investment, right? And which consumes the entire company for decades, right? And so, but they were very, very internally focused, right? And they could get their head around it because it was about business operations and supply chain and finance and, human capital and stuff like that. So that's kind of what that looked like. But what's happened over time is that is two things. I think the C-suite has evolved their thinking in terms of digital as not just marketing or internal process, but actually a channel to market, right? A differentiator for the company and an enabler or a driver of revenue. And so kind of that's one aspect of it. The second thing, so that obviously carries a lot more weight in their decision making, right? They can attach it to specific strategies that they have as a company, business strategies, not digital strategies, but business strategies. The second one, though, I think, which is kind of equally as important as what digital transformation has done, especially as companies get a little bit down the road with it, is it starts to expose the underbelly of the company to the market and to the customer, right? Mm-hmm. So where you had complexity or inefficiency or processes that were built only for internal enablement, and you had people that said, okay, that data doesn't make any sense to 99% of the people in the world, but it does to me because it's my job. that stuff started getting splashed onto your website or into your portals or into your e-com journey and stuff like that. And, that you talk about fires, Brian, they started fires, right? Because now you've got you're projecting that complexity onto your customer. And this is where customer experience really, I think, took hold in terms of not only priority on digital, but investment in digital is that, hey, if we're going to do this well, the first rule of customer experience from a digital standpoint is do no harm, right? Don't go backwards. Don't make people angry, right? The second is how do we differentiate and gain an advantage, right? And drive the business strategy. And a lot of what I think accelerated their thinking here is that we're doing harm, right? We're actually creating problems. So
do you have an example of that? I'm really curious. Like it might,
a great example of it. And I think this was exacerbated during COVID, but particularly, working for a distributor, Avnet, the notion of lead time, right? And so when a customer, whether you're a manufacturer or distributor, it doesn't really matter, when they come to your website and they're trying to understand, or they're doing some discovery or research and they're trying to understand how you can help them, or if you have what they need to fulfill their application or their need, they're understanding. They don't just want to know price, but more importantly, they want to know if you have it and how long is it going to take for me to get it. Right. And the B2B industrial industry in particular has long struggled with this notion of lead time, because there's just so many factors upstream from that moment that the customer is trying to understand what availability looks like, that that can throw that off or create problems. And what time was 15 years ago is that there were a bunch that there was a lot less. The customers weren't really doing all of their homework online, right? They were doing it through people. They were calling up a salesperson. They were calling up their distributor and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for. Do you have it?" And then so there was a person in the middle of that could say, "Ugh, that doesn't look right," and then they could go sort it out and give an answer. This is all self-service now. So when we took that human intermediary out of that process, not many people looked upstream to say, is this going to be okay? Are we going to be giving the right answers? And they weren't. And it created all kinds of problems, right? So there's this reflex now of, oh my God, we have to go solve that. But more and more what you're seeing now is people thinking ahead in that regard, saying, listen, digital and customer experience in B2B very much has to do with a process, right? It's a business process. It's not about micro interactions. It's about what business process internal am I exposing to the customer now? And when you're going to do this, it's really, really important for you to go upstream and downstream, right? In terms of the end-to-end view of that process. So at those moments of truth, you're providing the right answer or you're providing the right information. And so, that's where that was an example of do no harm, right? And we were actually creating more problems than we were solving through the kind of those early stages of exposing those things through digital. So
great stuff, Murugan. I know you had a question you wanted to ask here.
But before that, first up, Eric, I guess there's no secrets in e-commerce, right? You just can't hide any of those soft spots. But, Eric, thank you for sharing your experience. That got me wondering is that part of the reason why at least the distributors tend to have sort of two different digital front offices, one for the digitally native onboarded customers and one for the big boys, right? So I'm sure there are ramifications on how you look at ROI from respect to investment. They're usually separate platforms as well. Could you delve into that a little bit? Is that really what drives it?
Yeah, one of the other mistakes that I think was made early on in B2B organizations is that we as we came out with solutions, we treated all of our customer base end to end the same, right? And the reality is that whether it's manufacturing, it's distribution, it doesn't really matter. You serve different tiers of customers, I guess I'll call them. You've got big strategic accounts, right? That they have their own ways of doing things and a lot invested in that. They're going through their own digital transformation. So the idea that you can just land something, an experience or a process via digital in their lap and expect them to be able to kind of pivot to that easily it doesn't happen very often, right? So you've got your big strategic accounts where you need to develop more of what I like to call an embedded digital relationship with them, to be on engage, right? It's not just about them coming to your footprint and going through the interactions that you kind of want them to do from a self-service standpoint. It's about how do we actually get operationally embedded with them during, their discovery process, upstream of a purchase, actually digitizing and automating procurement through, kind of the post-sale journey that they have with you as a customer. And so, we've long done, EDI has been around a while, and that's a great way to get embedded with your bigger accounts, but it's also a heavy lift and it's a lot to manage. And so things like APIs, things that enable sort of that process automation, play really well with those big strategic accounts because they've got a whole end-to-end process. Your relationship with them is an end-to-end process, right? It's not a transaction. But when you get into some of your what I would call lower tier or smaller accounts, frankly, that don't have those heavyweight processes like the bigger ones do, then you do have other ways that you can deliver your value proposition to them, get that end-to-end life cycle engagement with them, and differentiate yourself in that regard as well. So I think you have to look at we talk a lot about is how much at the center of your digital transformation strategy is the customer, right? They have to be at the center of the digital transformation strategy, right? Because they're not all built the same, and you have different relationships with them, right? You may not even there may be products within your portfolio that you don't even sell to certain segments of your customers.
Right.
And that really came forward over COVID when everything went into allocation, right? Now I don't have enough inventory for all my customers. For this basket of products, I'm going to take care of the big guys, because they're the ones that need them. They're buying the production. They're doing the production buys, right? That's where the revenue is. So, you kind of got to look at that customer spread differently, and understand what level of digital services, I guess, are going to be relevant to them, from when they first kick the tires on you or find you all the way through how you support them as a customer.
Eric, you were talking earlier. We asked you the question about, what's changed, right? And you were saying that, that one of the areas of investment justification is to almost prevent disaster. Right? It's like
harm.
You do no harm, right? You call it do no harm, preventing disaster. Yes, all of the above. So, how do you do you build that into your ROI case when you're going to and does the C-suite understand that? If we don't, you gave the example of time, fulfillment time. You gave a really good example around that time to receive product. Does the C-suite get that? Do they understand that if you don't, because of these changes in how the new B2B buyer is interacting, that by doing no harm, there's actually a value to that to the business? And how do you quantify it?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I don't use do no harm as a business case. That's more about, listen, my job as a digital leader is to, when I'm going to propose an opportunity, a strategy, or when the leadership comes and asks me like, hey, we want to look at this, or we want, how can digital help drive this strategy? My job is to offer a point of view on the opportunity and the risks. Right. And what I usually do is when you do business case formulation, you're really focused primarily on how and when can we deliver on the ask, and what's it's going to cost, and what's the opportunity. However, in doing so, there's a cost of not doing things, right? Which is kind of some of the do no harm discussion. But there's an emphasis on, if we do this, we have to look at this end to end, right? And that's what that looks like from a time investment standpoint. Because if we don't, and we just look at the front end, which many B2B companies did in their early days of digital transformation, here's where those risks are, right? And we know that from as you get a little bit further down, you're not sharing requirements with them, with the C-suite, but you are sharing implications. And where I work in the do no harm is in saying we have to invest at this level. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if we don't, you're looking at A, B, and C, right? And then we get that, and there's risk associated with that. So that's kind of how I quantify it. I often won't attach kind of a do no harm dollar figure because I want them to kind of buy into the business case from an outcome and implication standpoint. But
part of your cost. It's part of your cost.
Exactly. But it's part of the investment.
Right. That makes sense. Murugan, I know you've been chopping to get in here with a question. Go ahead.
Right. Eric, do you then, before you go and vouch for a particular e-commerce property, do you then first say if the digital supply chain is up to speed, do you direct attention towards that before you go and fill out a front office prophecy? Is that how you actionize this?
I kind of do them at the same. If something's coming from me and my organization organically, we need to go do our homework, right? Before we're going to throw it out there over the wall for prioritization or getting it on a roadmap. What you do not want to do is put forward an opportunity and then come to realize that you can't deliver on it, or it's going to be twice what you said it would cost, right? So any advice, if I'd offer one piece of advice, is you're going to put your foot forward as a leader, do your homework, right? Understand what the readiness is to go after something. And I think it's okay. If in a large B2B company like Schneider or Avnet or Rockwell or the places that I've worked or many others, if you were to say that, well, we can't do anything until we're like 100% ready to up and down the entire process to begin moving forward, you never get anything done, right? And it would be way too expensive. So nobody would buy into it, and you would never do anything. And so, your job is not to wait until you're 100% ready to move. It's to pitch the opportunity longer term and then say, hey, and here's how we can get ourselves going, because there's a bunch of work that's going to take 12 to 18 months for us to realize, an end goal. But hey, here's where we can begin to make progress. And it might mean we might not have absolute efficiency in how we do it, but we're going to start to realize the benefit, the top line, the bottom line, whatever the case is, grow revenue, get to market faster, save money through self-service, whatever your ROI is, you need to show how you're going to start to realize that, in 6 months to 2 years based on what you're trying to get accomplished, not 5 years. So
Eric, how do you know, so you're speaking about this, how do you know if you're going into, 6 months at Schneider, right?
Yeah.
You're new there, but you've been doing this for a while.
Right.
How do you know a company is kind of ready to make these investments that you're talking about? How do you know, these can be sizable, right? Involve new platforms, all kinds of other things. So how do you know that, when you took the Schneider gig or, and it's just from your experience, how do you know a company's ready?
When I joined Schneider, I was looking for a few things, and this isn't unique to Schneider. This is kind of for the last 10 years of my career, understanding readiness. And the first thing I look at is when I'm onboarding, when I'm onboarding and I'm talking to people, do they understand what I do, right? Mm-hmm. Conceptually, do they talk about digital, right? Even if it's high level, right? Do they talk about do they understand, or do they exhibit a basic understanding of kind of how this digital stuff can help their business, right? And it's usually in the context of their functional or operational scope, right? It's if you're talking to this, even if I think in cases where you're talking to the C-suite, they're going to have a bias around where they see opportunity, right? Because it's aligned to what they're responsible for. But
sure,
first thing I look for is, do they talk about it? Is it part of the conversation even, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing, because I think that gives you a sense of, are they kind of culturally and operationally ready to move on transformation if they haven't already, right? The second thing I look at is I start to look at kind of their foundational readiness. It's all right, we're talking a good game here. I have a point of view coming as a new digital leader as to how I think I can help and how digital can help. But how far away are we on that end to end, and so that's where I end up starting those conversations. If I can learn a little bit there, saying, listen, this business process and this set of data isn't really ready for prime time. I need to think differently about how I'm going to talk about, what our readiness is to do to enter, kind of transactional e-commerce, right? Rather than just a catalog. If we want to do, if we start talking about, all the marketplaces are all the rage in large B2B companies now. If we want to go there, are we in a position from a process standpoint, and this is either marketplace or transactional e-com, but our processes ready? Is our ERP ready? Does our ERP understand the notion of an individual customer, right? Not a customer as a human rather than as a doc where we ship something. You know what I mean? So having a kind of an understanding of some of those nuts and bolts really helps inform, I think, at least early on when you join a new organization, where you need to focus your time and energy and where the company's ready to potentially move in the next 6 months versus the next 2 years. And, increasingly as a leader in digital, as you come in, we give you that 90-day, kind of honeymoon period of just learning stuff, meeting people, getting your head around the place. But pretty quickly after that, you need to start talking about what are we going to do, So that's kind of how I think about it. And then the third, just real quickly on the third point is this is where, I kind of alluded to this in my first point, but culturally, are they ready? I mean, this is disruptive stuff, it affects people's jobs. So is the company culturally, is the leadership ready to kind of take on transformation? Or, do you get a sense that, they need some convincing before that? So.
Right. Yeah, no, it's in fact, I'd almost argue that's probably the most important, right? Yeah. Is the leadership audit.
I haven't done this in my current role, but I've done it in my last two. I haven't done it yet in my current role, I should say. But a lot of what you can do to quantify that readiness is kind of a maturity index, right? That you there's a million models for this out there. Pick your consultant that has done them. But and I know you guys, Brian, you've got a series of these models that I've seen. Yep. Right. And so, but to get to do one of those kind of maturity indexes can be, if it comes out the way sometimes you like to see it as a digital leader, is not mature, because it gives you the opportunity to come and really form that strategy. That quantifies it a bit, especially when it gets bounced up against the competitors, stuff like that. That's a bit of a slap in the face.
Eric, I was just wondering, imagine your business stakeholders concede that they want to move away from being a link rerouter or a catalog online to transactional commerce. They also follow up to say, we want to test the marketplace waters, right? And you put them through a digital maturity model test, they're earnestly ready. But how do you pick a platform now? Do you pick a platform knowing you're going to stay there for 2-3 years before you need to ride the marketplace journey? And how do you exactly choose the right components to kind of fulfill that evolving vision?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think you have to have a really concrete understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, there's, and I, the platform that you pick, it depends on your company's technology investment strategy, right? Are you kind of an all-in, I want, the Uber platform that does everything, kind of something like an Adobe, or are you a best of breed, headless kind of ecosystem that is where you're bringing together more of a composable architecture, right? First, that depends on your company's technology strategy, which, unless you're the chief digital officer, and a VP, a lowly VP like me, you've got to participate in that, right? You're not necessarily defining that. So when I'm looking at platforms to support those strategies we're trying to drive, that's where I have to go first, is what kind of technology architecture investment strategy we have. But once you get past that, even if regardless of what kind of platform strategy you have, it comes to how good of a match is it for your requirements, from the basics to kind of where you really want to take that strategy longer term, to what does their product roadmap look like? You know, is it an informed roadmap that is modern and is looking to the future, or are they kind of lurching from quarter to quarter, right? How much does it cost? Probably the biggest question, right? So I think, you need to bring together a collaborative team that is going to be able to look at those things based on their subject matter expertise, and then find something that not only aligns to your business requirements, but fits into your near-term and long-term roadmap for it, but then it also aligns with that technology investment strategy. But I think the one piece of advice I'd offer here as a digital leader is go talk to people, go talk to your colleagues, go talk to your network, because that's where you're going to get the best, most unvarnished views of people's experiences with those platforms, with the companies. It's not just the platform, it's the partner as well. So I think you need to go do that homework, not just looking at a spreadsheet and how the numbers stack up, but go, we're talking about the importance of customer experience here. Go talk to some of their customers, and not the ones that they give you as references. See what else you can find, right? And you'll get the best unvarnished view of what life has been like with those.
Is the operating model of factor that you take into?
I'd say that one more time, Murugan.
So there's the run the business side and the change the business side, right? So you're kind of looking at the transformation part. Do you also check if the existing operating model that the company has for the operations of these applications, if that is a good fit for the platform of choice, or is that purely something that you kick down the road for the operations team to figure out?
I think it's a reality. Let me put it that way, right? I mean, we talk about this as end to end. You have to look at this end to end, right? And digital transformation is more about data and process than it is about anything that the customer interacts with, right? And so there's a practical reality of looking at what does your operational infrastructure and architecture look like to do these things. But so much of these are transformative that usually needs to transform as well. And sometimes these investments, and particular technology investments, can help drive some of that. Saying, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to bring in this stack or this platform, and it requires us to do something. This delivers on what we want. It's going to get us the outcome, but it's going to require us to do some things a little bit differently. So a lot of times you can use, I think to your point, you can use the investment in the platform and the partner to drive some of the internal transformation that you need to do, to position yourself for success.
So Eric, you're the VP of Digital Customer Experience. Awesome.
All right.
So no, that's awesome. That's amazing, title. And I think that, as we think about the customer experience, the way you're describing it, it's so important, putting the customer first, and your title has that word in it, which is amazing. How do you, number one, sort of define what customer service or customer experience, is in B2B? But then even more importantly, when you're building a business case, how do you measure the results? Like put some practical, tactical stuff in front of our listeners here.
Yep.
So, build me a business case for customer experience enhancement, and not based on, avoiding disaster, but, a material change in something positive of the business. How do you measure it? How do you build that case?
So the first thing I'd offer there is that my business cases are never about customer experience. Okay. They're about a strategy. They're about an outcome, right? Okay. Is that outcome, think about it functionally, right? From a marketing standpoint, is the outcome influence revenue, right? There's a leads. If you're doing e-commerce or marketplace, is the outcome top line revenue? If you're doing, if you want to drive kind of a more of always on self-service, digitally enabled self-service context, and gain productivity and cost savings by through call and inquiry deflection and things like that, more to self-service, what's your bottom line impact on that? So it's not the experience is a requirement, right? So it's kind of weird because I have that title, but it's never really about the customer experience. It's about what opportunity are we trying to deliver for the business? What value are we trying to create for our customers? And there's your KPIs, right? It's your experiential KPIs, NPS, We call right now we call it active users, right? We have a methodology around that. That's activity, right? It's activity. It tells you important things about how your customers feel about their engagement with you, and that's really what customer experiences is. It's their perceptions of you across their journey based on all those interactions, but it's not an outcome. The revenue gain from standing up an e-commerce business model is the outcome, right? I'll give you a perfect example of this. When I was at Avnet, we digitized a pre-sale engineering service we had that was focused on helping our customers design products faster, right? And we had a human manually delivered engineering competency that would help our customers in their product design process do two things. One would be not start from scratch, right? So we had a bunch of proven product designs that we knew worked and delivered outcomes that were application based, and we can say, hey, we have something that might be able to help here, and then it would also de-risk their bill of material for that product line, right? We don't want to sell you something that's late in its life cycle, as an example, right? So we digitized that. And we were able to save anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks of design time for our customers, which equals time to market, right? So getting to market faster and at lower risk. And so my point in offering this example is that it wasn't the customer experience that for that to work, it had to be good. Like we had to be a really, really good customer experience. But the outcome, the KPI was about leads. Right. We're doing this digitally now instead of having a human do it. What is that activity that we're getting? What are those potential customers doing? Right. And when they were engaged with this service, this digital service, this is a warm lead. They're working on something. Right. And so based on capturing what they were doing and the design they were interacting with or the bill of material they were producing, we were able to take that and hand that over to sales and say, you need to call those people now. They could also buy it right away, go from design to bill of material to buy in one journey. But more often it was they were working on something that was going to get to production and be a much larger and sustainable relationship. And so the outcome was leads. The requirement was create a really good customer experience here so people use it and it creates value for them. So I hope that helps because customers experience and the KPIs like satisfaction and engagement are really important to understand if you're delivering something that they perceive to be of value to them and it's helping. But from a C-suite standpoint, what you're trying to demonstrate is the business impact of that stuff. Right. And in the case like I shared, it was all about, are we creating visibility and opportunities for the sales organization versus and the customer experience scores were informing us if we were doing a good job with that. Does that help? Does that that's a very awesome. Salient, concrete example of the difference here, and it's different. So
it's a path to achieve the business outcome.
Exactly.
But it's a requirement to achieve the business outcome. Yeah, I got it. Murugan, I know you have a question. Go ahead.
No, I was just curious to know if in a scenario like that, Eric, when you choose to see what platforms or point solutions can be strung together to do this, just how complex, how many different stakeholders had to say it? I'm sure it's not just digital designing. It's going to cut across so many functions there.
Yeah, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, no question about it. I mean, especially when you when you're going to look together, when you're going to stitch together phases of the customer journey, right? You are talking about a pretty sizable scope of stakeholders. And it's this, the C-suite is one of your stakeholders from a strategic standpoint and an outcome standpoint. But from a delivery perspective, you're talking about your customer. If you're a manufacturer and you go through distribution, you're talking about your distributors. If you're you're talking about engineering, as the example I just showed, you're talking about the engineering team. You're talking about your ERP team, because if you're going to touch transactions or customer data, you're working with them. You're talking about the sales organization for sure, because they're often in a B2B organization, the recipient of either the pleasure or the pain that the customer experiences with you in their digital journey, right? So everybody, and they're also your best advocate, the sales organization usually, right? Because you're transforming those relationships from completely human led to either completely digital led or omnichannel, right? So you got to have all of those people on board, not only aligned on what you're trying to do, the outcome you're trying to drive, but that they're going to get behind what you're trying to do from a strategy and operational standpoint to get the support, right? And this is where the culture side of this really enters the picture, because, and it's one of two ways. It's are they ready? Are they like, I don't. That's going to either, we're not right. That's not how we go to market. That's not how we do business. Or I don't want anything to do with that because I don't know what it's going to do to me. Or, are they just kind of culturally ready to, from a leadership standpoint, to they have the appetite to do things differently? Because if the answer to those is kind of not really, it's gonna eat your strategy for lunch, Right. But the sooner you can get them engaged, Murugan, to your point, the better it's going to be, because they're going to feel like they're a part of the process.
Yeah, right. I think, Eric, the more you peel the layers onto this, you've gone back to justifying your first statement. It's not digital strategy; it's business strategy.
Yeah, it's all about business.
It's oversimplifying to call this digital. So
that's right. So Eric, we just got a couple minutes left here. But what are so you think about, you could be doing a lot of things, right? I mean, again, in your role, Schneider, there's a lot of places you could go with your digital customer experience, the outcomes you're pursuing. How do you prioritize and make a decision on what to invest in? I mean, there's so many things to think about, marketplaces and AI now, and, enhancing your e-commerce, your site search, your personalization. You got all omnichannel sales enablement. There's so many things to choose from. How do you make a decision?
I think you were as a digital leader, you wear, I think, 3 hats, right? One is, you're there, the way I talk about digital B2B companies is it's either digital, it's on this continuum, right? Either digital is the business, right? Which, kind of gets you into like Amazon realm, right? Right. Digital is a hobby where they still think it's just investing in a website, or what I call digital is in the business. And that's where most digital organizations sit, right? So you wear these 3 hats. One is, Murugan, I'll go back to the comment you just made. It's about business strategy, right? So your job is to position a digital capability and service and strategy that can support and drive and enable the business outcomes that your company is trying to drive, right? And many of those can be digitally centric in terms of, you need to get, plans and priorities and roadmaps in place that are aligned to that. Second hat is innovator, right? You're also asked to come in and lead this company in areas and opportunities that it doesn't know or it's not familiar with, right? So you need to bring in, you're wearing a hat where you're actually trying to drive certain elements of the business or activate opportunities that the company doesn't perceive yet, right? And that's either based on what your customers are telling you, where you see opportunity in the market, where you might be at risk, right? Based on what your competition's doing. So the second hat is bringing that kind of innovative perspective. And it's a big one because people are looking to you to do that.
Right.
And then the third is really just operationally, how can you help the company work better, right? And that's where you're looking at things like self-service. That's where you're looking at, how do we leverage automation, digitization from a process standpoint to create value through efficiency and scale. And that's, but at the same time, you're still working on an outcome there, and you're delivering value to your customers, and you're trying to hit the bottom line and help the company work better and faster.
Yeah. So you doing anything with AI? We have to ask.
That goes into that innovation bucket, right? And then it crosses all 3 of those, right?
Yeah.
But we're constantly talking about AI and where do we see opportunities for that. So across those 3 buckets, I mean, it gets wrapped up in the innovation conversation, but it's innovation within each of those streams, right?
Sure.
But yeah, we're without saying too much, the light is always on when it comes to AI. Let's put it that way. But it's early day. It's early
to
day.
the company. You guys' company logo is the light is always on, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah,
slogan, right? Yeah,
that was purely
awesome.
unintentional.
At least for me, in recent time, there's the longest that I've gone without AI being brought up. So up until the penultimate question, right? The longest. So clearly something's cooking.
And a lot of that conversation is coming from the C-suite, by the way. Now, can't AI do that? And you're like, got to figure it out.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. No, it's. I'm hearing it all the time, guys. AI being companies experimenting with it, doing different things with it, investing in it. I was we were at a workshop last week in Atlanta facilitating a conversation about this. And one company said that the C-suite told them to take 30% of their budget and carve it out and make it all about working with AI and finding ways to drive efficiency and create revenue opportunities in the business. So fascinating. People are investing in it. I'm curious where it all plays out. I think it's still a story being told, right?
Yep, no question.
So Murugan, any final questions you want to hear from Eric before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. I think he touched upon pretty much every single swim lane we wanted to. Thank you.
It's,
for
really
better
good.
For worse.
No, but good practical advice, Eric. Seriously, it was this was a fantastic session, and I think the way you framed it, I think, was really helpful for people. So I know that our listeners to this fireside chat will get a lot out of this. Any final words of advice you'd give to somebody who's coming in new to a role like you're in, in terms of framing themselves up for success?
Yeah, I think we talked about, it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier around being new in an organization and what do you look at? I think, really understanding kind of where the C-suite is at in terms of their thinking around digital. That's going to be important. Are they aligned? Can you get a sense of, because I think you see over and over again where, that's a bunch of smart people up there, and they really they all have a very high pressure job to do. So, they might not be looking at this the same way. So you kind of got to get a sense of that. And then I think the last thing I'd offer is, because I want to, it has something to do with what I said earlier around this idea of customer experience. Most B2B organizations these days have customer experience organizations specifically, right? And when I say customer experience is not the deliverable or the outcome, it doesn't take away from the importance of those organizations, because their job is to truly look at this from end-to-end standpoint, right? And say, are we taking care of people and doing the right things across every single touch point, online, offline, that we have? So my last, piece of advice for leaders is get in touch with those folks, right? Because they have an eye on the organization that few people in the company have, right? And they may have, especially if you're new to a company, you can get a real sense of where there's some low-hanging fruit for some quick wins, or where you need to train your eye on where some of the biggest areas of opportunity or risk are. So good people to talk to.
Yeah, no, like Jeff Bezos famously once said, we're going to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And those are the folks thinking about that all day long, right? Yep. And obviously Amazon's had a few wins along the way.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, Eric, thank you. Murugan and I have really enjoyed our conversation with you. This has been very enlightening. Folks, thanks for joining our Fireside Chat series here at Master B2B. Stay tuned for additional Fireside Chats coming up soon. And we'd love to hear from you. Come to our website at masterb2b.com and you can sign up to hear the rest of our on-demand content. Thank you all for joining us today. We will see you again soon.